Hello, welcome back. As you can see, I finally got the Discord link ready. I haven't gotten things fully set up yet, but it's open for anybody to join, and it's going to stay like that for a while. At some point, I might. It's still kind of invite only, but at some point, I might gate it. So, but that'll be far in the future. It'll be cool to, get some discussion off hours and stuff, and also um, get some links of stories as they're happening. So if y'all find anything throughout the day that you think I should cover on the show, then I'll do that, and that'll help me out too because I'm always looking for new things to cover. And on that, I have a couple stories to catch up on, but on this like soft civil war idea I've been talking about, I started thinking about it, and there have been quite a few periods of history, at least in this country, where you know there has been this time of like unrest and really close to like an asymmetrical soft civil war kind of situation. And then link out of date. I'm gonna have to figure something out with that. That's that's weird. Well, if I'll figure it out and I'll get a better link up tomorrow if it's not working. Yeah. But yeah, I realized that it wasn't just like the 70s through, the 60s kind of through the mid 80s, which is a significant time that I have a bunch of material on today. Um, it's called Vibe Check Community, but it's not. I don't think it's searchable on Discord, is it? Are groups searchable like that? Um, yeah, I don't want to open Discord while because I really can only probably have one browser open while I'm streaming, but I could figure it out after the stream for sure and post it. I could post it as a post or whatever. Yeah. Um, but yeah, there was like the Reconstruction, which was really crazy. There were all of these rebellions after the Revolutionary War over like taxes because it was like we just fought a war so we didn't have to pay taxes. Now we have to pay taxes to these new aristocrats who were the founding fathers. And then there were a bunch of like armed rebellions and shootouts with the government. And well, we'll figure it out for sure. If the link is the link did work, it might be yeah. You might need a VPN or something like that, but I'll still try to figure it out. It also says that you need like to have like you need to email verify or something like that. Um, but yeah, so that was quite interesting when I started thinking of it, and then I started thinking like, why did those times end? And usually it was because the government did some kind of like pressure valve, like gave some kind of concessions to at least uh keep people somewhat compliant and get them out of the streets and stuff. So that's definitely and they also infiltrated their groups, which is a big part of what I think happened in the most recent kind of rebellion phase, which we'll see through like COINTELPRO. But I want to catch up on this story with Alex Pretti real quick, though, because there's some interesting developments that happened over the past day. Apparently, he was attacked by ICE agents a week before or something like that, and they had broke his ribs or something. And they also had taken a picture of him and put him in this database. So some people are saying that he could have been targeted or recognized, which is pretty crazy. Let's see this real.
We are now learning that two officers prior during that fatal encounter with Alex Pretti this past Saturday, according to an initial report to Congress from the Department of Homeland Security and reviewed by CNN, a report that also says that they attempted to take him into custody. So
that's how fast I usually listen to stuff.
Let me walk you through this. This is the report from Customs and Border Protection's initial investigation into the shooting of Pretti. It says that an officer yelled, quote, "He's got a gun," multiple times before two officers
Oops.
fired as that struggle ensued that we have seen in videos. And I'm going to quote here from the report. It says, quote, "CBP personnel attempted to take Pretti into custody. Pretti resisted CBP personnel's efforts and a struggle ensued." It goes on to say, quote, "During the struggle, a Border Patrol agent yelled, 'He's got a gun,' multiple times. Approximately 5 seconds later, a Border Patrol agent discharged his CBP issued Glock 19, and a Customs and Border Protection officer also discharged his CBP issued Glock 47 at Pretti. What it does not specifically say is whether the bullets fired from these law enforcement officers hit Pretti. Now, it also gives us a little bit about what happened afterwards. This report, again,
Yeah, I mean, well, it would be safe to assume that they did. So weird.
The lawmakers adds that after the shooting, and I'm quoting here, a Border Patrol agent advised he had possession of Pretti's firearm. The BPA subsequently cleared and secured that firearm in his vehicle. Goes on to say that the personnel, quote, "cut Pretti's clothing and provided medical aid to him by placing chest seals on his wounds." Now, of course, Jake, as you know, there would be an internal review, and we're getting some of it within the Customs and Border Protection agency. Those were the officers involved in the shooting. The Department of Homeland Security is leading the investigation, the FBI in a supportive role, but we are now learning new details in this initial report from the Department of Homeland Security that went to Congress. But of course, this is still an ongoing investigation. Jake.
CNN is also now learning that about a week before his death, Pretti suffered a broken rib when a group of federal officers tackled him while he was protesting their attempt to detain other individuals. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez has the breaking details on this. Priscilla, what have you learned?
Well, according to sources who spoke with me and my colleague Jeff Winter, we're learning about this encounter that Pretti had with federal agents a week prior to his death. Now, we've learned more about what occurred over this incident, and we're told by sources that he had stopped his car when he saw ICE agents chasing what he described to sources as a family and began shouting and blowing his whistle.
This is another situation I think she's describing. Yeah.
So in that incident, he was then tackled by 5 agents, and one of them leaned on his back. That left him with a broken rib. This is according to the sources we've spoken with. And one of the sources said, quote, "That day he thought he was..."
So by leaned on his back, it was probably like the way that you see them like kneeling on him, on people with all of their force.
Going to die. Now, Pretti was later given medication consistent with a broken rib, according to records that we have reviewed here at CNN. So this tells us that there was an incident that happened prior to Saturday. We are also aware that federal immigration officers are collecting personal information of protesters and agitators that they interact with. Now, federal law enforcement appears to have known about Pretti prior to Saturday, but that doesn't mean that the agents who tackled him on Saturday knew about him. Now, recall that part of this collection of information comes within the context of the Department of Homeland Security repeatedly warning that their officers are under threat over the course of these operations. In fact, just this morning, the department publicized an online tip form for people who are allegedly harassing ICE officers. Now, I did ask the Department of Homeland Security for a statement, and I received the following, quote, "There is no database," something we've heard from other officials, "when our law enforcement encounter a violent agitator who is breaking the law, obstructing law enforcement, or assaulting them. Our law enforcement make records to advance prosecution. This is not groundbreaking. It is standard protocol." And what
Yeah, a lot of the people are trying to spin this and say, "Oh, that means that he was an agitator," but like they're just calling people who are peacefully filming agitators, and they can't really spin this any other way. So the way they're trying to spin it is that he was ideologically committed to protecting the people in his neighborhood from this invasion.
I mean by
That
that
was his
database
only
having come
crime.
up before is that White House border czar Tom Homan has said that there would be a database created for those arrested for interference. Now, in all of this, it doesn't indicate that Pretti was ever arrested so much as he had this interaction, this encounter a week prior that left him with that broken rib. So we're learning more details about him, but also telling of the dynamic that has been the case on the ground in Minneapolis.
And Homan,
Yeah, so they broke his ribs and they didn't even arrest him and charge him with anything. They may have detained him. I'm not sure of that detail, but he certainly wasn't charged with anything. So obviously he wasn't doing anything wrong.
and is now in Minneapolis. He's had a number of meetings. Tell us about that.
Yeah, he has met.
So yeah, that was the kind of interesting part that I wanted to share there, because they of course had to say, "Oh, well, there's no way to really tell if it was the same agents that interacted with him on both times, or if they had known about him, because they have this database of people." But at the same time, it does raise questions. You know what I mean? With the way that things have been going. Let's see. Yeah, and then there's also the Stephen. You know that things are getting bad when this guy is starting to backpedal. Top White House aide Stephen Miller acknowledges possible breach of protocol before Alex Pretti shooting. Top White House aide Stephen Miller said Tuesday that officials were evaluating why Customs and Border Protection Agency agents in Minneapolis may have not been following proper protocol before the fatal shooting of Alex Pretti, a remarkable acknowledgement of possible wrongdoing from one of the Trump administration's most influential and hardline operators on immigration enforcement. So this is the same guy who days ago told Kristi Noem to tell the world that Alex Pretti was planning to massacre people. I'm pretty sure that like those were his words that were repeated apparently, according to some of the things that I've heard. So let's see. In a statement to CNN, Miller said to the White House that the White House had provided clear guidance to DHS that the extra personnel that had been sent to Minnesota for force protection should be used for conducting fugitive operations to create a physical barrier between the arrest teams and the disruptors. Fugitive? What was it? We are evaluating why the CBP team may not have been following that protocol. That's provided clear guidance that extra personnel that had been sent to Minnesota for force protection should be used for conducting fugitive operations to conduct a physical barrier between the arrest teams and the disruptors. That is like a word set. They always throw out these word salads that mean absolutely nothing. The statement marked perhaps one of the most notable shifts in messaging to date on Pretty's shooting from one of the administration's most hawkish messengers. In the aftermath of the shooting, Miller labeled the Veterans Affairs ICU nurse a would-be assassin. Yeah, exactly. While Department of Homeland Security Kristi Noem claimed that he committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's what they say about all of them. Video, though, soon showed that Pretti was swarmed by law enforcement and disarmed before he was fatally shot. And President Donald Trump directly contradicted Miller's characterization on Tuesday and said he hadn't heard the domestic terrorist rhetoric. Miller told CNN in a statement the initial statement from DHS was based from reports on CBP on the ground. On the day of the shooting, Noem was in near constant touch with the White House, including Miller. So yeah, I mean, they got caught, and I'll show you in a minute. Is because like even their own side is revolting against them on this, and I think a lot of it has to do with the gun ownership thing because some of these guys like do not want to back down on principle on that issue, and you know, good for them in this case for sure. Noem was given guidance from multiple White House officials on how she should talk about the shooting during her press conference later that evening, including suggesting falsely that it would turn out that Pretti had been brandishing a weapon. But yeah, this is definitely a clear reversal. Multiple sources said that neither Miller nor Noem's jobs were at risk despite the fallout. Of Miller in particular, one White House official told CNN that Trump is hesitant to talk about getting rid of someone who has been here a few weeks, let alone someone who has been with him for more than 10 years. It's not even on his radar. Trump said publicly Tuesday that Noem would not step down, adding that she's been doing a very good job. Yeah, I mean, that's not a vote of confidence really, because as we've seen the day before people get pulled off of the job, they say the same thing. Trump said in a Fox News interview Tuesday that he now plans to de-escalate the situation in Minnesota. See, they're definitely backing down. And I had a ton of people in my comments from that one title I had where it said that Trump was backing down on this, and they were like, "Where's it happening?" But yeah, let me check up on chat real quick. Yeah, it's all about the optics. And I've even seen some people post that this is a fake out. Like I've seen Kyle Kalinske talk about that, but I haven't watched his video on it yet. Um, but that's always a possibility that's a fake out. I don't think it's a pullback. It's a little bit of a change, Trump told Fox News. Yeah, they're trying to like let off a little steam, but without fully changing. But there is there is some hope, though. I haven't seen any official news on this because for some reason, this pardoned January 6th lunatic named Nick Sorter has been breaking news for some reason. He was the person who broke the news about Bovino getting at least demoted, but he reported it as fired initially, and then the word came down that he was actually demoted. So it wasn't like he was not right, but he was also not wrong. So from him again, he says that Trump administration has ordered ICE to not arrest non-criminal illegals, according to journalist Nick Sorter. So he's angry about that, obviously. Of course, many of the Trump people are really angry about that as well, but they are definitely still kind of feeling a backlash among their base. This here is Glenn Beck, who is like a mega right winger, has been for years, was on Fox News for the longest time before he made The Blaze, which it sounds like something that somebody who smokes weed would create. I don't know why this dude. I don't think that he smokes weed.
Because what this BBC reporter is saying is true. It's absolutely true. He is getting in between him, the police, and somebody else the police are shoving. He is only holding a phone. He is down on the ground. He is resisting arrest, but his hands are down on the ground. His head is down on the ground. Then another agent reaches over on top of the other agents who are closest to him on the ground, reaches into his back where he sees an exposed gun, pulls the gun out, and then walks away with the gun. So he's no longer armed unless he has two guns, and they don't claim that he had two guns, only one. And pulls it out and walks away. Right after that, somebody yells, "Gun, gun, gun, gun." That's when the police officer fires at him. Now, the other police officer did not know that somebody reached in and took his gun. It might have been somebody who was saying gun, might have been saying it because they saw the other guy, because he's not marked as a federal agent, the other guy pull the gun out and walking there with a gun. So somebody might have seen him with a gun and said, "Gun, gun, gun." All the cops think that it's Pretti, and they shoot him. Okay. This is not something that you deal with as, an 8-year-old. This is a conversation for adults to have. And I'm not hearing the adults. First of all, what Noam said is not true. He didn't approach. If you want to say technically he approached carrying a 9mm, he did, but it was holstered and in his back. And you have a right to carry a gun at a protest. I don't think that makes you smart, but it is perfectly legal and constitutionally protected. So I'm sorry, just because you have a gun in your back, if you reach for the gun, if you pull for the gun, then you could probably be expected to be shot if you are pushing the police around. But if you have a gun and you don't have your hands on it, you should not be shot. You have a right to carry that gun peacefully. Okay. The minute you start pointing it at people, you're in trouble. He did not. He did not. So this idea that, he was foolish for walking into, this protest with a gun. Well, you have a right to carry it.
Yeah, and he's not the only one. There have been a lot, like Rand Paul is another one.
This is
even though he has not been somebody who has been, totally subservient to Trump. Thomas Massey, obviously, and a number of Republicans are not having the comments that have been made about how he deserves to be shot because he had a gun. This is Tim Tillis, I believe is his name, and he said that both Noam and Miller should be fired, which is quite interesting.
Before this has been adjudicated.
Senator, do you have confidence in Secretary Noam?
None at all. No, she's. I've tried to maintain confidence, but look, I've done and we'll be sharing this information. We've done a Trump 1, Trump 2 comparison of disaster relief. There's no comparison whatsoever. Trump 1 was right on with disaster recovery. You think about Matthew and Florence, and this one, she's not even handling the other part of her job. I mean, at one point she thought FEMA should be eliminated. To give you an idea of how incompetent I think she is, she actually thought FEMA should be eliminated. And when she had a FEMA director said he didn't think that was a good idea, she fired him within 24 hours. Now she understands that is an important part of her job. These are like amateurish assistant manager sort of thought processes going into somebody who's a secretary in a cabinet level position. It's unacceptable.
Does she need to step down? Does she need to?
Stephen Miller is in the same boat. This guy, after doing the stupid,
He was so ready to answer that question too. That's the funny thing about it, is like he was getting an out too. He was getting another question, and that guy was trying to throw the next one in. And if he did not want to answer that, he totally could have just ignored it and went to the next one. But he was like, "Oh, Stephen Miller, I'm gonna answer this."
comments he made about Greenland getting the president in a difficult circumstance is one of the people that came out publicly and said that this guy was a terrorist before he had even talked with anybody on the ground. And that's clearly not the case now. So, I mean, it's just, I mean, Stephen Miller never fails to live up to my expectations of incompetence.
Why do you think he should be fired?
I'm going to leave that up to the president. I can tell you, if I were president, neither one of them would be in Washington right now.
But do you think Noam should step down?
I think Noam needs to decide what. I think if Noam looks at her body of work, I could not be. If I were in her position, I can't think of any point of pride over the last year. She's got to make her own decision, or the president does. But she has taken this administration into the ground on an issue that we should own. We should own the issue of border security and immigration. But they have destroyed that for Republicans. Something that got the president elected, they have destroyed it through their incompetence.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, the last part is I'd have things to say about that. But regardless, it is interesting to see this kind of, oh, it's Tom. Okay, yeah, I knew it was a TT. All right, cool. Yeah, Tom Tillis, that's it. I was thinking it was Tim. Yeah, they all lie about the 2020 election and everything else, but this one is different, similar to the administration threatening to silence free speech or hate speech. Yeah, no, they have gotten to a new level of crazy in this administration. And I say it all the time, but I knew it when I saw the fake MS-13 numbers on the knuckles, and he tried to shake that interviewer down to be like, no, that's not Photoshop. That's real ink on his hands that you've taken a picture of. Yeah, totally crazy. But yeah, that was one of many. There were a lot of them, but I think that was the main thing I was gonna look at from there. Yeah, that's another one. Department of Homeland Security says photography could be a sign of terrorism. But yeah, it's gotten pretty it's getting pretty crazy. I'll take a look at this real quick before I get into the deep dive. Apparently they're wearing like Meta sunglasses, which is not great. Damn, yeah, that must be the camera. And he's yeah, there's that's crazy. So they're taking pictures of everybody. Shit is a little bit scary. A little bit scary. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, let me get into some of this other stuff. So yeah, I've been going through this idea. I've been seeing a lot of conversations, obviously, about yeah, definitely Palantir's database for sure. They have AI readout AMD picture. Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, I've been seeing a lot of conversations about this idea of like an asymmetrical or soft civil war, and how like we could be headed towards it, and how it's happened like how it has happened before and recently. And the debate is about like the 70s and stuff, because there were all these bombings, and there were all these armed revolutionary groups from a variety of different backgrounds. And I started like really thinking about that, and it's I think now is definitely worse, and the reason why is because the what up? Yeah, hey, what's up, zombie? The like so before in the 70s, like it was mostly leftist radicals that were trying to uh, uh, fight for racial equality or fight against the war. And there were some like the Ku Klux Klan, but they were like a remnant of the Reconstruction era, which is another time that I think can be described, and that was like right after the actual Civil War. And it was this time where like slavery continued to some extent after the Civil War. It's just like under very different means. Like they just used they used contracts and things like that to keep people on the plantations for a very long time. And there was supposed to be a lot of different things that were supposed to correct for that era in history that never did. And y- y- so much is still connected to that. And even after that period, there were all these times in the early 1900s where you had like anarchist bomb plots, and you had the Rockefellers killing a bunch of Union strikers and stuff like that, which would be another cool thing to look at like later this week after we get through like the 60s and 70s and stuff. Yeah, definitely. All the assassinations in the 60s. Let's take a look at that. How many assassinations were there in the 60s? Or list of assassinations in the 60s. Maybe that would be cool. Would be a better look at. And what I like I'm gonna put 60s and 70s, because the 70s I think are like connected to it. They do have 1960s, the decade of assassins. Let's take a look at that. But yeah, I think that the prison breaks were super cool. Like, let's see what we got here. Looking for yeah, so these were a lot of big people, yeah. Medgar Evers, civil rights, John F. Kennedy, James Chaney, Michael Goodman, Andrew Schroeder, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy, Fred Hampton. Yeah, that is pretty crazy. And I'm sure there were a bunch of failed ones too, as well. See, the 70s sucked. My parents let me a peck rock and peed everywhere. Yeah, the 70s that was when the Weather Underground was, and a lot of the Vietnam War activism, MK Ultra, and MK Ultra kind of came before that as well. But COINTELPRO was a really big deal too. I think COINTELPRO would be cool to look at. COINTELPRO. Let's see if there's like an old documentary on this I can pull up, because that I think there's gotta be today a program that is very very similar, probably even more elaborate, you know what I mean? Let's see, all these are like either 5 minutes or an hour that I'm looking at. Let's take a look at the actual the text first. Let's see. COINTELPRO, derived from counterintelligence program, was a series of covert and illegal projects conducted between 1956 and 1971 by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting American political parties and organizations that the FBI perceived as subversive. So this was basically like any kind of political organization that wasn't funneling energy into the Democrat or Republican Party. And, you know, they say that this is over now. And I think the only reason why we know about this is because of the Black Panthers breaking into an FBI building, doing some serious spy shit. I'm pretty sure that's the story. We'll go through it and see. Groups and individuals targeted by the FBI included feminist organizations, the Communist Party, anti-Vietnam organizers, activists in the civil rights and Black Power movements, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the Black Panther Party, Students for a Democratic Society, Students for Nonviolent Coordinated Community, environmentalists, animal rights, American Indian Movement. That was another one. That was really big at the time. And there were armed standoffs, and I believe the people from the American Indian Movement took over Alcatraz and stuff, if I remember correctly. And then there was Leonard Peltier, or Petier, I forget the pronunciation there, but he was like in prison forever until he was pardoned to house arrest a couple of years ago. Let's see. Such as the young. So yeah, they investigated everybody. Although the program primarily focused on organizations that were part of the broader New Left, they also targeted white supremacist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan and the National States Rights Party. That's interesting because they're like on the same side. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I have seen that. Amazon is working with ICE and sharing Ring doorbell video with flock cameras. I saw something really good on that from I think it was 404 Media, maybe. Yeah, that was definitely pretty crazy. I don't have a Ring camera, but I've definitely been seeing that. The Lakota Pipeline 2004 American PSYOP, the podcast that was talked about. Was that the Dakota Access Pipeline? I remember that. Yeah. The Alcatraz. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I thought so. I could look up something on that in a minute too, but I think this is a super interesting story. The FBI engaged in covert operations targeting domestic political groups from its earliest years. Covert operations under the official COINTELPRO label took place between 1956 and 1971. However, the official chronology of the program is subject to debate. According to a U.S. Senate investigation, if COINTELPRO had been a short-lived aberration, the thorny problems of motivation, techniques, and control presented might be safely regulated to history. However, COINTELPRO existed for years on an ad hoc basis before the formal programs were instituted. And more significantly, COINTELPRO type activities may continue today under the rubric of investigation. Yeah, so like this is one of the FBI's main tasks. It's not just investigating crime. It is protecting the state from things that it perceives to be threats. And that includes ideological threats. Many of the tactics used in COINTELPRO are alleged to have seen continued use, including discrediting targets through psychological warfare, smearing individuals and groups using forged documents, and by planting false reports in the media, harassment, wrongful imprisonment, illegal violence, and assassination. According to a U.S. Senate report, the FBI's motivation was protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order. Like, if that's a problem that people are trying to do that. You know what I mean? It's obviously you're trying to control your power. Yeah, the CIA files always disappear. Exactly. Yeah. Beginning in 1969, Black Party Panther leaders were targeted by the COINTELPRO and neutralized through tactics including assassination, imprisonment, public humiliation, and false criminal charges. Some of the Black Panthers targeted included Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, Assata Shakur, Geronimo Pratt, Mumia Abu-Jamal, and Marshall Conway. Common tactics used by COINTELPRO were perjury, witness harassment, witness intimidation, and withholding of exculpatory evidence. Yeah, and they like framed Mumia with murder, right? I can't remember that. Like if he was framed or if they were like if it was self-defense. I like I have I've dug into so much stuff over the years that I know like bits and pieces of everything, but I'm not confident on every detail, you know what I mean? Um FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover issued directives governing COINTELPRO. The other thing is because it's still debated, I believe. Ordering FBI agents to expose, disrupt, misdirect, credit. I want to get into how they got the documents because that part is badass. Oh yeah, link in the pinned comment for the Discord. Yeah, there's nothing really set up yet. But yeah. I'll be working on it, and I'm open to taking suggestions too. I don't want to spread out the channels too much and have way too many channels way too early because then things will get spread out too much. And I also want to be careful about links. Like I want to allow links, but I know that like at some point people could jump in there and put scam links in there. So yeah, this talks about how Martin Luther King was a major target of COINTELPRO, so was Malcolm X. I want to find out the Oh yeah, this was a March 1968 memo stated that the program's goal was to prevent the coalition of a militant black nationalist groups and to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify the militant black national movement. Yeah, that's probably why they killed Malcolm X. But the other thing is that the whole purpose of the drug war was to so like drugs were illegal for a really long time, but the penalties weren't as bad and it wasn't as big of a deal until Nixon. And the reason for that is because they wanted more reasons to go after random people. And everybody does drugs, but they vilified by everybody does drugs. I mean, there are people in every group and every race and stuff that do drugs, you know what I mean? But they singled out the hippies and the black people as people who did drugs and had this media association with them. And there was this whole plan that they admitted to. I'll look up the quote real quick. I think the guy's name was Ehrlichman. Yeah. John Ehrlichman, drug war quote, drug quote. Yeah, here it is. This was, he says, you understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. That's like straight up what the guy said. And that's insane. And now here, what, 70 years later or whatever it is, we're still dealing with this because the tactics aren't that different these days either. Is definitely so they had some really wild tactics back then. I mean, they still do, but I think that the tactics developed then and they are still in use today. Uncovering. Yeah, this, I think, the program was secret until March 8th, 1971, when the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI burgled an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, took several dossiers, and exposed the program by passing this material to news agencies. Like, we have kind of gotten soft, you know what I mean? Because we don't do shit like that no more. I mean, we are living in a panopticon extreme techno surveillance society. So it's, we it's a little bit harder for us to burgle an FBI field office these days, but this is still kind of badass that they did it and that they found out about one of the uh, you know, one of the craziest undercover programs in the history of the country that was actually made public. The boxing match known as the Fight of the Century between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier in March 1971 provided cover for the activist group to successfully pull off the burglary. Muhammad Ali was a COINTELPRO target because he had joined the Nation of Islam and the anti-war movement. Many news organizations initially refused to immediately publish the information, with the notable exception of the Washington Post. After affirming the reliability of the documents, it published them on the front page in defiance of the Attorney General's request, prompting other organizations to follow suit. Within the year, Director J. Edgar Hoover declared that the centralized COINTELPRO was over and that all future counterintelligence operations would be handled case by case. Yeah, right. That's just like how they ended MK Ultra, which I'm sure they didn't. It's like all that bad stuff, we did it in the past, but we don't do that anymore. And, we learned from that when you caught us, and then we just stopped doing it. Additional documents were revealed in the course of separate lawsuits filed against the FBI by NBC correspondent Carl Starn, the Socialist Workers' Party, and a number of other groups. In 1976, the Select Committee to Study Government Operations with Respect to Intelligence Activities, some of these things they should just abbreviate, commonly referred to as the Church Committee. Yeah, you should have just said the Church Committee. After its chairman, Senator Frank Church, launched a major investigation of the FBI and COINTELPRO. Many released documents have been partly or entirely redacted. So they only got bits and pieces of what that program was actually doing. And the bits and pieces that they got were crazy. And then there's all this additional redacted material. FBI claimed so even back then they had to be they didn't have to be as covert as they had recently. I mean, Trump has kind of changed that norm to where, he just says the quiet part out loud and is like, yeah, we're going to crush you. We're going to take your oil. We're going to take your voting rolls, all that shit. But yeah, for the longest time, they had to have some kind of pretense. Here, they're just saying, we're trying to neutralize groups that they thought were subversive, which means that people who are trying to change society in ways that the two mainstream parties don't like, the two mainstream parties that are able to, prevent any change from being made or prevent any change that the masses actually want to happen from being made. Insane. Range of targets. We looked up this mostly. What's this? Examples of surveillance spanning all presidents. Oh, so that they were spying on the presidents? Wait. Ask the Oh, no. This is the stuff they ordered. So, and Kennedy was wiretapping Martin Luther King. Everybody thinks that Kennedy is like the big progressive guy. But Malcolm X actually had a lot to say about Kennedy that was very relatable in terms of how there isn't a true opposition party in the United States. Just looking to see anything else interesting in here. Yeah, psychological warfare. That's how they it's very interesting. They will infiltrate activist groups, and they still do this today. And that's how you know these things are still operating. And they will create infighting and put people against each other and do all sorts of shit like that. And that happens so frequently. Let's see. Yeah, that was a crazy one. COINTELPRO memo proposing plan to expose the pregnancy of actress Jean Seberg, a financial supporter of the Black Panther Party, hoping to possibly cause her embarrassment or tarnish her image with the general public. It's so weird that like those kind of things you could hold over people's heads that back then. Let's see, let me catch up on chat. Well, no, it said that Kennedy was just involved in surveillance. That it was probably across multiple administrations for sure. Zombie literally broke the medium by maybe it's just a weird coincidence that AAG had a big life insurance policy. Just catching up on chat. Yeah, it's so that was happening. And then you had organizations like the Weather Underground around the same time, which a lot of people think were feds. I think that is possible, you know what I mean? Especially because they got kind of I think they went in a particular direction later, you know. But what they used to do is they used to like put bombs in the in government buildings and then call in bomb threats and have everybody evacuate and shit. Let's look at the specific details though, because it's been a while since I checked this out. This was generally in the same time frame. Yeah, it's like was an American left-wing Marxist militant organization, first active in 1969, founded on the Ann Arbor campus of the University of Michigan. So one thing that I definitely pointed out like previously, but I want to make sure that it is highlighted that like this time seems more violent than what's happening now to a lot of people because of the fact that this violence was disorganized and not sanctioned. The violence that is happening now is invisible to many people because of the fact that the people in power are the one who are doing the violence, so they have made it legal. You know what I mean? So I really do believe that the level of violence is higher now than then, even though that is an unpopular take because everybody points to the number of bombings and the number of shootings and stuff like that. But it's like when you have a you know, like a revolutionary faction that is trying to gain power, that is disadvantaged, that has nothing to lose, and is essentially fighting for freedom. They, you know, they're gonna get intense. You know what I mean? And yeah, so let's take a deeper look at this. So I was saying during the elections when they're all putting in our ballots, they call in a fuck ton of them bomb threats up here in Michigan. Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting to consider. Like, it's the same thing of where they say, like, you know, we never riot and we never do this and that. Like, you know, people who are like, I guess would be extremely right wing and rich and stuff like that. They would say that they don't need to enact that violence, and like, why are you guys always getting all upset? And it's like, you know, because we're in this position we're in, you know what I mean? And we're not getting anything from the government that's positive. The FBI described the WUO as a domestic terrorist group with revolutionary positions. Yeah. Let's see. In the 1970s, the WUO conducted a bombing campaign targeting government buildings and several banks. Some attacks were preceded by evacuation warnings, along with threats identifying the particular matter that the attack was intended to protest. So yeah, like these things, like I said, there were break-ins of government buildings, there were shootouts with police, there were bombings, but you know, I don't think that we had this level of we definitely had Jim Crow, but we didn't have this level of you know, like the concentration camp situation that we currently got. You know, the prisons can be somewhat of that, but I think they're on a whole other level what we're dealing with now. So yeah, the WO issued a connection with the what's this? 3 members of the group were killed in an accidental Greenwich Village townhouse explosion, but nobody was killed in any of the actual bombings. So the only people that died from their bombings were members of the group from like an accidental discharge. But they were still widely recognized as a terrorist group, which I mean, if you're using bombs, I guess that's like understandable, but the designation of terrorist group I think is problematic to begin with, because you know, it doesn't consider governments that drop bombs to be terrorist, but it considers resistance groups essentially to be terrorists, enemies of them to be terrorists. So that is kind of like a, you know, I'm not sure what the word for the term is, but it's definitely a very sticky term that like I don't know if that was the correct word for it, but it's weird, and it's one of those Orwellian propaganda words, in my opinion. In the late 1960s, United States military action in Southeast Asia escalated, especially in Vietnam. The U.S. anti-war sentiment was particularly pronounced during the 1968 U.S. presidential election. The origins of the Weathermen can be traced back to the collapse of the fragmentation of the Students for a Democratic Society, following a split between office holders of the SDS, or the National Office, and their supporters and the Progressive Labor Party. During the factional struggle, National Office leaders such as Bernardine Dorn and Mike Klonsky began announcing their emerging perspectives, and Klonsky published a document titled Toward a Revolutionary Youth Movement. So yeah, this was oh yeah, SDS. I remember them. Let's see. There was another one too. There was another group that was, what was it? The Liberation Army. Yeah, I'll look that one up because that was another crazy one. And there were like all of these yeah, that's one. That's the one. This was a crazy ass story. Let's see if I can get a good article on this. Yeah, the Symbionese Liberation Army. This was like this revolutionary group that kidnapped this rich woman, and then like she joined them and stuff. That it was Patty Hearst was her name. I think her family was heavily involved in the media. Let's check this out. This was another group that was at the time. I mean, like I'm saying, we don't really have groups like this now, except for on the right. There aren't really groups like this on the left right now. That's not to say that the left isn't organizing, but you know, it's very interesting that they keep on talking about all these like, you know, dangerous leftist groups. All you have is Antifa, really, and they're not even remotely as much of a threat as Proud Boys or Patriot Front or something like that. But yeah, let's take a look at this. Death to the fascists. Oh yeah, that's the caption for the picture. In 1974, a little-known but wealthy Berkeley undergraduate, Patricia Hearst, became a media celebrity after being kidnapped by a group of revolutionaries calling themselves the Symbionese Liberation Army. The kidnapped victim transformed into a seemingly willing accomplice over the months of her kidnapping. She participated in crimes, claimed allegiance to the SLA, and defended her captors as valiant heroes. From tape recordings, her trial testimony, and own telling of her story years later, several different versions of events emerge. But there seems to be no resolution to the questions about her transformation. Her parents thought that she had been brainwashed. Experts suggested that she was a victim of Stockholm Syndrome, mistakenly identifying her captors as in an effort of self-preservation. Yet it is also possible that Hearst repudiated her upbringing to flirt with radical terrorism. What website is this? This is PBS, man. I thought you all supposed to be like a little bit. I mean, it is funny that she became a temporary class trader until the cops came, and then she was like, actually, I was forced to do all this. The Revolutionary Symbionese Liberation Army formed in Berkeley, California, just months before the kidnapping. So they had started, and months later, they were already kidnapping a celebrity heiress. You know? I mean, Berkeley had long been America's center of radical militarism. By the early 70s, after years of protests and resistance, some fringes on the left were developing a sense of urgency. In the ever-present debate between nonviolent and violent actions, the idea of terrorism was gaining ground. The SLA grew out of a Black inmate organization, the Black Cultural Association, active in California's Vacaville prison in the late 60s and early 70s. Coordinated by University of California, Berkeley professor, the group brought white students, including Russell Little and William Wolfe, to the prison to tutor prisoners in political science, Black sociology, and African heritage. Begun as an inmate self-help group, over time the BCA became more political, largely focused on Black nationalism. One Black Vacaville prisoner, Donald DeFries, who was serving a sentence for armed robbery, formed a splinter group, Unisight, that became the basis for the SLA. Future SLA members, Angela Atwood and Nancy Ling Perry, also visited the Vacaville to meet with radical prison groups. In the eyes of the young radicals, the Black prisoners, no matter what their crime, took on heroic proportions as political prisoners oppressed by racist and corrupt American society. This article is so biased, but it was one of the most descriptive ones I found. Just the language that they use, you know what I mean? It's like most people are probably in there for petty crimes, and they were, in poverty or drugs. Yeah, thanks for coming to the live. I appreciate you checking it out. Oh, really? Another MK CIA killer robber sold them the guns. He was interviewed recently. That's fascinating. Let's see. In March of 1973, DeFries escaped from prison and headed to his friends in Berkeley. With the help of Little and Wolfe, he found shelter with two white women, Nancy Ling Perry and Patricia Soliskas. I butchered that last name. In the meantime, a young couple, Bill and Emily Harris, had arrived in Berkeley with their friends Gary and Angela Atwood from Bloomington, Indiana. The Harrises and Angela Atwood soon joined radical groups and connected with DeFries and others. By the end of the summer, fiercely opposed to what they viewed as oppressive racist society, which it was, the radicals formed the Symbionese Liberation Army. Their militant, loosely Marxist priorities included ending racism, monogamy, the prison system, and all other institutions that have made and sustained capitalism. So I find it funny that PBS here says that fiercely opposed what they viewed as an oppressive racist society, and they're talking about 1973. Like, come on, bro. Like, it was. If you don't want to admit that it is now, you got to at least admit that it was then. Hey, come on now. DeFries took the name General Field Marshal Sink, I guess, and became the group's leader. Their black nationalist programs included creating a system of homelands within the U.S. for minority groups, armed with stolen weapons and funded by robberies. The group trained in military maneuvers in Berkeley Hills. So yeah, they had a safe house. There was a good documentary on this too. Should look for it. The small group of mostly white, upper middle class, well-educated young women led by an escaped black convict were determined to create a violent revolution. It is hard to imagine life within the walls of the safe house. Intense political discussion, Fox military discipline, guns everywhere, and free and open sex. This sounds terrible. On November 6th, the SLA stepped onto the public stage by murdering Black Oakland school superintendent Marcus Foster. That's a weird one. I don't remember that. The SLA had targeted Foster because he supported an identification system for students. But by the time of his murder, he had in fact withdrawn that support. Yeah. Some people be getting too radical, you know? The SLA's crime announced that the group was one capable of committing violent acts in the name of revolution, but it also brought down the scorn of the Berkeley left, most of whom found the political murder of a black man incomprehensible. Yeah, so then they went underground. Then, in February 1974, they kidnapped 19-year-old heiress to the Hearst family fortune, Patricia Hearst, a Berkeley undergraduate. Hearst was at home with her fiancé, Stephen Weed. That's spelled W-E-E-D. When 3 members of the SLA forced their way in and abducted her. It's wild how you used to be able to just run up in famous people's houses like that. Like the Manson people did it. They just ran up it. Like, what's going on? We really must live in this crazy police state sheltered society with technology and stuff like that, where nobody can. I mean, in some ways, like, you know, I don't know if that's it though. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably something just like I do find it weird. Although I guess just a couple years ago, didn't somebody just stab one of the Beatles or some shit? In recording delivered on February 12th to the KPFA, Patty Hearst told her parents that she was okay, that she was not being starved or unnecessarily beaten. She told police to try not to find her. SLA General Field Marshal made a demand for food to be distributed to poor people in the area. Later, Hearst would say that during the first weeks, SLA members had confined her to a dark closet. When Patty's father, Randolph Hearst, replied that the demands of the SLA were impossible, Patty spoke in another communique on February 16, asking her parents to stop acting like I'm dead. DeFreeze stated that the SLA was looking for a good faith gesture. On February 19th, Patty Hearst announced that she would create People in Need, a food distribution program. Their plan was to feed 100,000 people for 12 months with $2 million. And what must have seemed like a miracle to Berkeley's left-wing anti-poverty activists, People in Need began its work just a few days later. But the poorly organized program failed to fulfill the dream come true as riots over the food began. Wow. Yeah, I mean, this was quite a wild one. So I think there was like a bank robbery. Let's see if I can find that one. Oh wow, they put up like a $6 million bounty. Like, see, this is why shit seemed so wild back then, because there was like a lot of this, you know, like there was violence. Don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of spectacle around random, isolated violence. And I think that is a lot different than organized systemic violence that's happening under the cover of law. Let's see. Shooter's house got robbed during a game this year. Oh, yeah. Maybe I'm just... Now I guess you just SWAT somebody if you want, you know, like if there's a rich person and you got their address. Not saying that's good. That's a terrible thing to do, but That seems to be what people do now when they're trying to target a celebrity. See, the end of SLA. On April 21, 1974, 4 members of the SLA hit up in the Crocker Bank in Carmichael, California. During the holdup, Emily Harris shot and killed a bystander. In September, Hirsch, Bill, and Emily Harris and a new SLA member, Wendy Yamasara, were arrested in San Francisco. When asked for her occupation while being booked, Patty Hirsch told the officer, "Urban guerrilla." In a sensational trial in March 1976, Patty Hirsch, represented by well-known defense attorney F. Lee Bailey, was found guilty of armed bank robbery and sentenced to 7 years in prison. She served 22 months before having her sentence commuted by President Jimmy Carter. Bill and Emily Harris pleaded guilty to kidnapping Patty Hearst. They served 8 years in prison, which is interesting because, like, can't she decide not to press charges, you would think? It was the end of the SLA, its short-lived, dangerous, revolutionary dream. Yeah, that was the like, there's just so many fascinating stories from that era. But and like I was saying, there are many other eras too. You got these spikes of unrest and resistance in United States history, and there are a lot of, like, overlaps with the reasons, because there are, like, inherent contradictions in the whole idea of this country, of everybody being created equal, but it being founded on slavery, and all of these injustices that are happening with all of the rhetoric that is a part of our culture about how these ideals that we're supposed to live up to that we don't as a country. And it's it's created this situation where people will eventually rise up against it in different ways, and it started right after the country was founded. And I feel like until things are rectified, that there are going to be these times of unrest. And not saying I'm just identifying the situation, you know what I mean? I'm not like because I've always been very undecided on certain tactics. I think the best way is to, like, work for a better future, try to build alternative systems for long-term stuff. But I don't know, man. So, some of the shit they did in this, like, this particular group, was wild. The Black Panthers, I think that their work was great, and then they were infiltrated and destroyed and killed. And there were a lot of Weather Underground was also crazy. But I want to come back to this and see the whole because they did have connections. Like, I'm pretty sure they had family government connections. Shortly before the Days of Rage demonstrations on October 6, 1969, the Weatherman planted a bomb which blew up a statue in Chicago commemorating the deaths of police officers during the 1968 Haymarket riot. That's one to look up. I'll look that, because that's 1886. That's very long time ago. The blast broke nearly 100 windows and scattered pieces of the statue onto the Kennedy Expressway below. So, yeah, that's definitely. The city rebuilt the statue and unveiled it, but the weathermen blew it up as well. The city rebuilt the statue again. That's kind of hilarious, actually. The city compromised and built the monument once more, but this time they located it at the police headquarters. Let's look at the Haymarket, because I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with that. This was a big point in Howard Zinn's book in The People's History of the United States. The Haymarket Affair, also known as the Haymarket Massacre, the Haymarket Riot, and the Haymarket Square Riot, or the Haymarket Incident, was the aftermath of a bombing that took place at the Labor Day demonstration on May 4th, 1886, at Haymarket Square in Chicago, Illinois. The rally began peacefully in support of workers striking for an 8-hour workday. It was held the day after May 3rd rally at the McCormick's Harvesting Machine Company plant on west side of Chicago, during which two demonstrators had been killed and many demonstrators and police had been injured. So the reason why they kept on blowing up this statue is because it's commemorating police and not the workers that were killed. At the Haymarket Square rally on May 4th, an unknown person threw a dynamite bomb at the police. Damn, dynamite bomb. That just sounds crazy. At the police as they acted to disperse the meeting. And the bomb blast and the ensuing retaliatory gunfire by the police caused the deaths of 7 police officers and at least 4 civilians. Dozens of others were wounded. 8 anarchists were charged with the bombing. They were convicted of a conspiracy in the internationally publicized legal proceedings. So yeah, this was the thing. They didn't have anything to do with the bomb. They were just charged with incitement because of their ideology and because they were like protest organizers essentially. The evidence put forward in the court trial was one of the defendants may have built the bomb, but none of those on trial had thrown it. And only 2 of the 8 were at the Haymarket at the time. So 2 of the people were there, and 6 of the people who were charged were not even there. 7 were sentenced to death, and 1 to a term of 15 years in prison. So that means pretty much probably all of the people that weren't there, except for maybe 1, were killed. And they had nothing to do with it, just because they happened to be anarchists. Illinois' government, Richard Oxbley, commuted 2 of the sentences to terms of life in prison. Another died by suicide in jail before his scheduled execution. The other 4 were hanged on November 11th, 1887. In 1893, Illinois Governor John Peter Altgeld pardoned the remaining defendants and criticized the trial. The site of the incident was designated a Chicago landmark in 1992, and a sculpture was dedicated there in 2004. Yeah, that's the one that they were just, yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty crazy one. And it's like, so I feel like there's this kind of idea that I don't think that this time is unusual in history when it comes to the unrest. I do think it is unusual when it comes to the centralized control power grab, like trying to put all of this authority into the executive branch. That is the thing that's unprecedented in this time. The concentration camps, not unprecedented. The police activity, not really unprecedented. Maybe the violations of the Fourth Amendment seem kind of unprecedented, with them just being able to enter the house. But yeah, I think that, there's been this kind of tension in this country over the contradictions between what we say we are and what we actually are. That's kind of how I feel about it. Yeah, the American first agenda is the unitary executive theory you're thinking about. I would agree with that. I'm not like a fan of that whole America first idea, because I think it's like it allows for imperialism and for us to just colonize the planet essentially, and that ain't cool. And it also puts people at risk here who they want to not deem an American, which is that came from civil rights era. Oh yeah, governments are all around the world are out of control, definitely, and especially this era, they are getting increasingly fascist and increasingly reactionary. And I think it is in response to the economic problems that we're having globally. And a lot of the economic problems that are happening globally are at a lot of it is to blame on the US because of the status of the global reserve currency and what it does with that. And also you got the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, all of these kind of they have created this mess of a global economy that really only enriches the people who are already rich, and their protection mechanism for the unrest that is creating is fascism. And that is why I think we're seeing governments get more reactionary. But that's just kind of, my take on it, my analysis. Um, but yeah, these are a couple of really fascinating stories, and there were even more in the 70s. I mean, and then I actually looked, there was the Move bombing too, but that was in the 80s. And so that stuff was still continuing into the 80s. And if you're not familiar with the Move bombing, this was a radical group in Philadelphia. They were definitely on the unhinged side of things. Like even their community was like you know, they were doing what like they were like primitivists, so they didn't believe in like technology and stuff like that, and so they had like trash all over the place, and then the neighbors were complaining about the bugs, and they were like, the bugs are your neighbors and all sorts of shit like that. And they were definitely unhinged, and they were in a community where it was like a black community in Philly where they had like an activist tradition, you know what I mean? So these people were put up with for a long time. And finally when the cops were like, you leave the neighborhood and we're going to get rid of these people for you. The neighborhood was like, okay, yeah, we'll leave, if you'll get rid of them, no problem. So they left, told there was only gonna be a day. It was like this massive shootout, and then it ended with the police blowing up the entire block, like, just dropping a bomb on the place and blowing up, like, everybody else's houses. And this was just, like, 1985, so not even that long ago. And, let's look at some pictures of that because that was insane. Um, and again, this was like, let's see, this is only 6 minutes, so let's watch. Look at this. Look at they
Presenting classical Chinese dance in a large-scale performance featuring traditional costumes, vibrant backdrops, and details from ancient
commercial.
China and beyond.
Coming to Hippodrome Theater.
But yeah, they leveled a whole block, and they did not have to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though they were called, that group was definitely causing a problem in the neighborhood, there are definitely better ways to deal with that. Oh yeah, polls move all the time. Well, geography speaking, and actually, let's see. I'm muting through the commercials here. Here we go.
One of the worst tragedies in the history of Philadelphia. In May 1985, the city's police department dropped an improvised bomb on a residential home that housed the Black revolutionary organization called Move. The bomb and the ensuing fire killed 11 members of the group, including 5 children, and destroyed more than 60 nearby homes. Ali Rogan reports on why so many.
Yeah, so like it killed 5 children too. Like you could have gone in there and get the children out of there. Like, you know what I mean? Half of the reason they probably said they were getting in there was to protect the children from these people and shit. You know what I mean? So like, I was just born like a year after this. So it's crazy to think that this is so close to our lifetime. You just bomb a whole city block.
Are still coming to grips with what happened.
MOVE is a totally revolutionary organization.
The complicated story of MOVE begins in the early 1970s. The organization followed the teachings of their founder, John Africa, who advocated a lifestyle rooted in nature. All members took Africa's last name and lived communally in West Philadelphia. They were known for staging disruptive demonstrations and frequently clashing with authorities, protesting everything from police brutality and war to pet stores and zoos.
MOVE is and was an organization that's very much committed to life in all of its forms and whatever that looks like.
Tommy Oliver is the director of 40.
This reminds me of, like, I used to have a friend back in the day, and he moved to some other country. I can't remember where he moved to, but he was a really cool guy. His name was Dominic, and he used to hand out flyers for me back when I was throwing parties in Baltimore and DC. And he had a rabbit, you know, and I went over his house one time, and the rabbit, the stuff that you put in the rabbit cage was all over the floor. Like, there was rabbit shit on the floor, and he was like, the rabbit was all over the place. And he's like, I can't put the rabbit in the cage, man. I just can't do it. He's like, and I'm like, well, it's in your apartment in Washington, D.C. That's like kind of a big cage. And he's like, I just can't put it in the cage. And I'm like, all right, bro. But yeah, it seems like that was the kind of mentality that these people had, just on a bigger level. You know, I respect the mentality. You know what I mean?
Years a Prisoner, a 2020 HBO documentary that traces the group's origins.
They're committed to eating naturally, to living naturally, to not being reliant on technology.
We walked around naked a lot. As children, the organization did not, they believed in vitamin D from the sun. They believed in allowing your skin to be tougher and stronger.
Mike Africa Jr.'s parents were both members of MOVE.
Yes, it was unorthodox, and yeah, some things were strange to some people, but for me, that was life.
That way of life often put MOVE at odds with local police and their neighbors, who accused them of creating unsanitary living conditions.
Them trying to live in the way that they wanted to live didn't sit well with a lot of people. So sometimes the neighbors, sometimes the city, and it escalated pretty significantly, pretty quickly.
In 1978, more than a year after the city issued an eviction notice, Philadelphia's then mayor.
Look at that robot guy. Look at him go. Look at the guy with the green suit on. I never noticed that. I've seen so much footage of this shit, and I've never seen this guy with the green suit
on MOVE's home.
They're going to go either easy or hard way. That can be standing up or laying down.
The months-long standoff culminated in a shootout. One police officer was killed, and MOVE's home was demolished. While MOVE maintains that the officer died by friendly fire, 9 of its members were convicted and sentenced to up to 100 years in prison, including Mike Africa Jr.'s parents.
The mayor admitted that.
Yeah, no, I knew it was a bomb suit. It just looked funny as hell.
He believed my parents were innocent. He believed that my parents were not in prison for the charge that they were charged with.
Police are inside MOVE headquarters in West Philadelphia conducting an intensive search for weapons.
He says the media's portrayal of MOVE was often exaggerated, and he says the organization was misunderstood even among many African Americans.
MOVE members are not the turn the other cheek type people. And a lot of people felt like pacifism was the answer. And MOVE members were not pacifistic. If a cop attacked them, they would fight back.
Tommy Oliver says those early confrontations, including that 1978 shootout, are critical to understanding what eventually happened 7 years later.
You had officers and members of the police force who wanted revenge.
In May of 1985, Philadelphia Mayor Wilson Goode ordered the organization to be removed once again from a home where they were living.
What we have out there is war.
And on May 13th, local news stations like WCAU in Philadelphia covered the escalating crisis throughout the day. Police would fire more than 10,000 rounds of ammunition into MOVE's row house before eventually dropping a bomb on it.
That's crazy.
The city's police commissioner at the time, Gregory Sambor, defended his officers that evening.
At no time did any police position fire in an offensive posture. It was purely in a defensive posture.
11.
We purely dropped a bomb on your house in a defensive posture.
MOVE members, including.
It's because they have no courage, man. They cannot go up against people who actually will want to fight back. They are so scared to do that.
5 children were killed. While no city officials were criminally charged, a Philadelphia investigative commission later concluded that police actions were clearly excessive and, quote, unconscionable.
I don't think I'll ever recover or heal from what happened.
Mike Africa Jr., who was 6 at the time of the bombing, is now working as the legacy director of MOVE.
Wow.
He's reunited with his parents, who were released from prison in 2018 but remain on parole.
I've never heard of another case where a government has dropped a bomb on citizens in America. This is not something that you can repair back to normal. You have to find other ways to cope. And that's what I've been doing for the last 40 years.
In 2020,
imagine being a kid in that house. That's like as that's happening, and then growing up with your whole family gone, I guess, in this. And you know, I definitely would be willing to believe that what he said was true about the fact that the media really played up the differences of that group. You know,
Philadelphia City Council formally apologized for what happened, as has former Mayor Wilson Goode. But Africa Jr. says 4 decades later, he'd like the city to create a permanent memorial to commemorate all that was lost that day.
In your opinion, why do you feel that so few Americans know about the events that took place 40 years ago?
I think the city of Philadelphia does a really good job of limiting the amount of exposure to what happened. I also think that MOVE history is a very controversial history that brings up a lot of trauma for a lot of people. Black people were killed by law enforcement. And, you know, if you saw what happened to George Floyd, and at a certain point, you're tired of hearing about the people that were getting killed by these police officers.
But that doesn't stop Mike Africa Jr. from his mission of making sure the history of MOVE and the tragic event that claimed 11 lives isn't forgotten. For PBS News Weekend, I'm Allie Rogan.
So yeah, I mean, all throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, there was this wild shit going on where it was, you know, effectively like a type of civil war between the state and armed revolutionary group. Yeah, they really hate black hippies. It's a combination of their biggest enemies. Imagine the kids who survive all that BS right now being in the detention centers. It is horrific that we're living through this and that's happening. History is going to look back on this as such a messed up time. And you know, people are going to think that they were always against it, or they're going to say that they were always against this, just like they said that they were always against the Iraq war and stuff. Oh yeah, and you said Arizona, they're already in Phoenix and they're doing drive-by pepper sprayings. See, look at that. They're just pepper spraying protesters for fun right out of the thing. I'll back it up again. Look at that shit. Right there. Right there. Yup, that's already happening in Phoenix. Oh wait, shit. Let me I was right here. Hold on. Look at that shit. She wasn't even ready for it. Like, and there's no way that anybody is going to be held accountable for that. Like, this shit is wild. Extremely wild. Yeah, like how is this even okay? Now, this, you know, the next couple days is going to be kind of pivotal on how this plays out. I don't think that they're going to back down all the way. I think that this next couple years is going to be an intense fight. But I do think that they're on the defensive right now, which is a good and rare position. Yeah, the chemicals that they're using are even worse than usual. And they also used an LRAD in tonight, I think, or last night. Let me see if I could find the LRAD. So the LRAD is a a sonic device that can cause permanent hearing damage. Let's see here.
The long-range acoustic device LRAD. 1, 2, 3.
You gave no warning. That was like 1, 2, 3. They should give you like, hey, I mean, they shouldn't use it at all. But you know, if they're gonna give a warning, you should be like, yeah, in like a minute. You got like a minute to get the fuck out of here. But they shouldn't even do that because they shouldn't even have this weapon. Yeah, that's some crazy shit. I keep on doing that.
Acoustic device. The long-range acoustic device LRAD. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, those things are rough, man. Let's see. Somebody trying to dispute this now. Grainy photo of an unidentified device mounted on ICE truck. Has Reddit sleuths convinced federal agents are deploying sonic weapons. This was hours before this article came out. That's 10 hours ago. This 5 hours ago. And this is even CBS News, which is in Trump's pocket. Minnesota State Patrol uses long-range acoustic device first used by military to disperse Maple Grove protesters. I haven't seen one of these used somewhere in a while. Dozens of protesters were detained Monday night after making a lot of noise outside a hotel where they believe Border Patrol commanders were staying. Something troopers threatened to use to clear the crowd made a lot of ears perk up. It's called a long-range acoustic device, or LRAD. Minnesota State Patrol troopers used a powerful sound system first used by the military. The LRAD is like a loudspeaker, but it focuses the sound in a narrow cone so that if you're inside the cone, it's extremely loud. Let's see if they talk about the symptoms here. When it's cranked up, Kankin says it can be overwhelming. We used it in Iraq when I was in with the Marines. We tested it on the staff. They gave us the demonstration. If you're in the cone, it sounds like the voice of God is speaking to you. LRADs can project spoken commands at the intense volumes or emit a loud, piercing tone designed to get the attention and deter movement. But Caucian says that even spoken commands can have a powerful effect. I think we saw that in the video there of the system because it's so loud. I mean, it pushes you back. In some situations where you might end up using force, kinetic force, or even lethal force, you know this can avoid that and avoid damage to permanent damage to people. Although it can cause permanent hearing damage. LRADs can be used as a sonic weapon and at full volume could cause pain, nausea, or hearing damage. Police say they arrested 26 people for all unlawful assembly and misdemeanor riot charges. That was the thing outside the hotel, I believe, that we were looking at the other night. Against LRAD, I don't know if there are earplugs that work for that. I mean, earplugs would always be probably help, but yeah, that might be a good thing. I mean, earplugs are even good if you're going to the club for sure. And I've known like so many DJs over the years from back in the day that all have tinnitus and stuff now. So, but yeah, that I think that brings me to the end. It's getting kind of late too. I gotta work in the morning and stuff. But let's definitely stay in touch in the Discord. I'm gonna get a little bit more organized in there. It's gonna be pretty open. The only rules are gonna just be like, don't be a dick. And I think I'm gonna have some kind of either a specific channel or that Thank you. I appreciate that. It was kind of on the fly today, and I wasn't exactly sure which direction I was going. So I'm glad that y'all got something out of it. Yeah, I definitely what for your music and stuff? Yeah, for sure. It's John Vibes. You should see me as the isn't it on the pinned comment, Daniel? You see the pinned comment? It's the vibe check community I put. Um but yeah, I want to have like some rule about like medical advice and stuff like that. Like if people want to share that kind of shit, I want to maybe have a channel for it and still um because there could be people like trying to shill products from that and also like uh you know but other than that, I don't think I'll have too many rules, and I just want to I want to definitely have people warned to be careful about links if we're going to be posting links, because especially if it gets like the channel gets bigger and there's a lot of people in the server, then I don't want to post somebody to post some scam links that you know uh, messes up somebody's computer or robs them or something, because I've definitely seen that happen, for sure. And yeah, and that, but yeah, I think it'll be cool and it'll be super helpful to me because I am always looking for, um, yeah, I can send it to you. Let's see. Just make some mods and we can check them. We can get an AI in there to weed stuff out as well. They're easy to vibe code. Yeah, YouTube links and articles for sure. I think I'd keep it at that. Um, yeah, so the link should be on the top, but I don't know how I could email you a link, Tammy. Yeah, so I think tomorrow we could probably continue with some of this stuff because there's so much. And we don't have to I didn't even do Kent State. Yeah, we could do that and then we could back up a little bit and go to American Indian movement taking over. Yeah, I'll post it again tomorrow. And maybe I'll post it in the I'll post it again tomorrow. And you can also check the chat. So the chat disappears for like 24 hours after the video goes up because it's processing, but a day after the chat it goes back up and you can find the link then. Yeah, I could definitely do American Indian movement because that was something on my list to get to that I just didn't have time for. That would be cool. But yeah, you can definitely come back to the chat and it'll still be pinned. And I'll post it every day for, a while. It's not going to be that close because it seems like we all get along well and it's good conversation in here, so we should be able to continue it. Awesome. Yeah, that sounds good. I appreciate that. That would be helpful because I want to I want to get that going. That was an awesome idea for y'all who suggested it. I was hesitant to do that because I wasn't sure if anybody would be interested. So that's super cool. Yeah, that'll be cool. And yeah, so then tomorrow I'll do the American Indian movement and we'll look into some of that stuff and Leonard Peltier and the Alcatraz situation and maybe some of the other stuff that I'm unaware of too, because I haven't really dug into that stuff in a while. Yeah, I think this is a good community. Exactly, exactly. I'm happy with that. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I will. I'll catch you all in the Discord and tomorrow on the stream. His welcome back was chicken skin, intense. Any of Peltier's grandsons is on Sabby Sab chat a lot. Yeah, I watch her all the time. She's awesome. She's been really good on the like Kirk research recently. But she's always really good. I anytime I see one of her videos pop up, I watch it. Catch y'all tomorrow. Peace.